But we begin tonight with chaos at home and chaos abroad. As President Biden met with nervous world leaders for the G7 summit amid the renewed rise of European fascism and what many are calling global Trumpism, Donald Trump was rallying his sycophantic troops in Washington, D.C. But as for the chaos at home, allow me to share a story you probably don't hear much about. You probably didn't hear much about last night's congressional baseball game, an annual affair that's normally pretty innocuous, a vestige of bipartisanship and congeniality that raises money for charities. But this year, it was interrupted by climate protesters. 8 people were arrested as they tried to protest on the field wearing shirts reading "End Fossil Fuels." Meanwhile, Representative Lauren Boebert was reportedly flouting Nats Park rules by vaping where it's forbidden. The whole affair is in some ways emblematic of our politics, where crucial issues like the climate catastrophe are no longer debated in the halls of our completely dysfunctional Congress, particularly the embarrassing House of Representatives, where Boebert is the typical Republican member, flouting the rules of class and decency, which leaves people who care about crucial issues for our planet or our country to try to litigate them with lawmakers in the public square. And there's another way that congressional baseball game is emblematic of the mess our politics are in. After Republicans won the game, they gave the game ball to someone who wasn't even there, Donald Trump, their king of kings and lord of lords. Today, the Republican godhead, who fomented an insurrection to save himself from the embarrassment of losing re-election, returned to the scene of the crime, meeting with congressional Republicans to figure out the party's agenda, which apparently centers on getting him out of his conviction on 34 felony counts. House Republicans reportedly kicked off their meeting by singing happy birthday to Trump, who turns 78 years old tomorrow. Trump is reportedly very disappointed with them for dropping their plans to impeach President Biden for no reason and with no evidence. But now that he is convicted of felonies, his sycophants are looking at whether there is some way that they can intervene and overturn his humiliation. Among the topics for today's confab, according to Politico, harnessing the powers of Congress to fight on his behalf and go to war against the Democrats he accuses of weaponizing the justice system against him. Adding that one of his first calls in the wake of his conviction on 34 felony counts was to Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, insisting we have to overturn this. That's right, the royal we. And he didn't hold back on his baseless attacks about the justice system behind closed doors. According to the Washington Post, Trump repeated his attacks on the Justice Department, calling the department dirty, no-good bastards, according to 2 people in the room. His Republican toadies have already taken up his false claims of weaponization of the department, which, as a reminder, had nothing to do with Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's prosecution or the jury's guilty verdict. Yet now, House and Senate Republicans are doing their very best to offer some options to appease their mad king, like using the appropriations process to target special counsel Jack Smith and cut off funding. Mike Johnson is already backing a bill to let a president move a case to federal court, I guess presuming there will be lots of future felon presidents. And Republican senators are expanding a punitive blockade of President Biden's nominees. Senator J.D. Vance is spearheading that effort, presumably part of his tryout to be the next hang Mike Pence, despite once comparing Trump to Hitler before drinking the MAGA juice and taking the knee. It's worth noting that Donald Trump did not meet with Republicans in the actual U.S. Capitol today, but rather at the nearby Capitol Hill Club. Still, it was his first visit to Capitol Hill since January 6, 2021, when, as we all remember, insurrectionists doing his bidding to try to overturn the certification of Biden's election stormed the Capitol, trying to attack many of those very same members who Trump met with today. That includes Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who said this not long after the Capitol coup attempt.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it.
Well, I guess it's all good now, since Mitch McConnell has since endorsed the dear leader and attended today's little pep rally for Trump, because, I mean, he said, he'd support the Republican nominee. McConnell called today's meeting entirely positive, while most of the rest of the Republican caucus that the pro-Trump mob tried to kill on January 6th applauded and stood by adoringly while Trump spoke and did his usual Grampy's agitated because he's been watching too much Fox and needs a nap act.
We're a nation that is being laughed at all over the world. We have a leader that's being laughed at all over the world.
Laughing at President Biden? Okay, man, let's play that.
Less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
Right. They were laughing at you, Donald. Joining me now is former Senator Claire McCaskill, MSNBC political analyst and co-host of the MSNBC podcast, How to Win 2024, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat, New York University professor of history and author of Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present. Thank you both for being here. And Claire, I do want to start with you. Let me read to you Congressman Benny Thompson, who chaired the January 6th Select Committee, his response to Donald Trump's return to Capitol Hill. After inciting a deadly insurrection that decimated the halls of Congress, how dare Trump show his face on these grounds? Congressional Republicans allow him to waltz in here when it's known he has no regard for democracy. Since January 6th, Donald Trump, a twice impeached convicted felon, has repeatedly doubled down on his disrespect for the rule of law and continues to sow hate and division. He still presents the same dire threat to our democracy that he did 3 years ago. And he'd be wise to head back to Mar-a-Lago and await his sentencing. Unquote. Your thoughts?
Well, it's something, isn't it? Watching them all clap. And, you know, I look at the folks I served with who would tell me in very plain terms what a disaster Donald Trump was the first time he was president. They'd go to meetings at the White House. They'd come back and we'd huddle on the Senate floor. And I'd say, well, how was it? And they'd say, well, it's just unbelievable. He doesn't know anything about anything. It's just all about him. It's all about him. And yet there they all are. You know, I don't get it. And, you know, the other thing the Senate did today, Joy, and you may be covering this in another segment, but I got to get this in here. They voted against protecting IVF. Mm-hmm. You know, last week they voted against protecting contraception. I don't know what they think this is, but I guarantee you there are undecided voters everywhere that are watching them genuflect to this guy who has just been convicted of 34 felonies and what has happened to America, and more importantly, what has happened to the Republican Party.
You know, Ruth, tell us about what this is, because there is a strong man kind of playbook of the way that they get people to bend the knee, you know, and the image to me of members of Congress who his mob tried to kill, going up to Donald Trump and saying, happy birthday, Mr. President. Here's the baseball from our game yesterday, is pathetic. It's unmanly, it's sad, but it's what they're doing. These are people who were calling Donald Trump a racist, a bigot. They know he's a felon. Why are they taking the knee, and why are they doing it in such humiliating fashion, including Mitch McConnell?
Well, these are classic authoritarian dynamics. And one of the saddest things about authoritarianism is it asks you to betray not only your compatriots when they start getting hauled away for deportation, you turn the other cheek or you abet the violence, but it asks you to betray yourself. And it's a kind of moral collapse that, you know, having Trump back on Capitol Hill, I see this as a kind of symbolic undoing of January 6th, where he had Republicans running for their lives. These were people who were calling their loved ones to say goodbye. Some of them, you know, escaped harm by 20, 30 seconds. And authoritarian leader cults require you to submit to that and then forget about it, forget about your own well-being, and instead clap the leader who has humiliated you and put you in harm. So it's really dangerous, and it's also really sad.
You know, Claire, I think about what combine what the two of you are saying. Do they understand, your former fellow senators, that Trump needs them more than they need him? Mm-hmm. Republican-based voters will vote for any Republican. You could say, my name is Beelzebub. I am the devil I am the devil himself. Are you a Republican? Yes. they're going to vote for that person. It doesn't matter who it is. It's Mitt Romney all the way to Trump. It doesn't matter. Their base is going to vote Republican. Trump needs their imprimatur. He needs normal people who feel a little icky about voting for a felon, an adjudicated sexual assaulter, and a person who tried to overthrow the government. Having Mitch McConnell bless that is actually something Trump desperately needs. Somebody who will ignore the fact that he called our military losers and suckers, people who say that's okay, right? He needs them. Do they understand that?
I think they could have at one point in time. Let's rewind the tape, the Access Hollywood tape. I mean, when that happened, keep in mind many of these are the same Republicans that when Todd Aiken said that when a woman is legitimately raped, her body has a way of shutting down, all the Republican leaders rejected him. That's why I won by such a big margin. It wasn't because of me. It was because the Republicans stood up to him and said, that's not acceptable. They had a moment then when some of them backed up and said no, but then they all got afraid because they saw what happened to some Republicans who had done that. If they would have united against him, once again, the first impeachment, if they would have united and say this is not acceptable, or after January 6th, if they all would have just held on to their fear. Josh Hawley was running for his life.
Yes, he was.
And he was standing there today applauding like this was the biggest hero in America. If they just would have stayed where they were right after January 6th, Donald Trump wouldn't be the nominee. He would not. But they are too afraid of the base of their party, even though they're supposed to be leading, not following somebody who is so flawed as Donald Trump.